All right, let's expand a little bit more on this story with Thembisa Fakude, who is a senior research fellow at Africa-Asia Dialogues. Thembisa, as always, a very good afternoon, and thank you so much for your time. Look, interesting perspective of how you unpack how the attack in Moscow could potentially mean ISIL-K objectives, as well as their mandate, might have slightly changed. Tell us why you think this is.
Well, I think this is because ISIL has got very clear objectives in terms of what they want to achieve. ISIL, which stands for Islamic State in Iraq and Levant, they want to create an Islamic State in Iraq and in Levant, meaning countries such as Jordan, Palestine, and Syria. So we know exactly what they want. ISIL-K also is quite clear of what it wants. It wants to resuscitate some sort of a territory or empire that used to be called Khorasan, which is now in the region of Afghanistan, and that used to consist of parts of Iran, parts of Pakistan, and Afghanistan. So that's what they want. Now the question is, why will they then go and target Russia? Because that's totally outside the mandate. We understand, for example, Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda is different because Al-Qaeda is looking at changing the current geopolitical reality and global balance of power. So it's more of a global movement than the ISIL, different franchises of ISIL. So that's why I'm a bit wary on why this has happened in Russia. But at the same time, I'm not ignorant of the fact that we once had a situation where rebels or militants were accused from Chechnya, and that was used, according to reports and investigations that were carried by Russian investigators, including some of the journalists who have since died. We know that what happened in Chechnya was used as the pretext by Vladimir Putin to go and attack the rebels in Chechnya, and what unfolded after that was, shooting down and burning down of Chechnya, particularly the main city of Grozny. So there are different schools of thought at the moment, at least from where I sit.
Look, Thembisa, I really want us to ponder on that point that you've just raised, exactly that. What reasons would ISIL attack Russian territory in the midst of all the current tensions with the US over Gaza and war with Ukraine? One would have to wonder if there isn't a third hand at play here. Surely there's room for various speculations of scenarios. What is yours?
Oh yeah, there's definitely room for speculation. But interesting is that the senior officials in Russia are already accusing Ukraine of having been part of this. So whether this is a pretext of Russia going full force into Ukraine, we'll have to wait and see. But knowing Vladimir Putin is not going to take this lying down. And if they do insist, of course, that it was Ukraine that has committed this, we are likely to see another aggression and war escalating in Ukraine. Ukraine, of course, has come out and said that they were not part and parcel of this. United States has given its own intelligence, again, all trying to prevent Vladimir Putin from going into Ukraine. But by all looks of things, it seems as if the country that's going to suffer the wrath and revenge, as already stated, of Vladimir Putin is going to be Ukraine this time around, because it simply doesn't make sense for everyone to say that this was ISIL-K that has committed this, although of course they've taken and claimed this attack. It still doesn't make sense for those of us who have been following the events and who've been following the actions of ISIL-K, that they've always been concentrated in Asia. They've always concentrated themselves in Afghanistan, particularly in the Khorasan region. Now that they go into Russia, it's quite confusing, and very few of us already understand why. Nonetheless, of course, there's a pact between ISIL-K and other ISIL formations in Russia, if there are any, that seek to create some instability in that country.
Now, Russia's global fight against ISIS, as well as its affiliates, Thembisa, does ISIL then stand any chance to demonstrate their much sought-after goal to evolve into a terrorist organization with global influence? We've seen footage of said perpetrators, and it's quite clear that Putin wants to send a very strong message in terms of his retaliation. Reports are also indicating that Russia is preparing fighter jets to thwart off any attempted approaches by their attackers, or do you think maybe Putin is just blowing off hot air?
Well, Putin is emboldened at the moment after the elections. He garnered over 87% of the vote, so he's quite confident that whatever he does is going to have a support of Russians. So Russians are likely to support him in whatever it is that he decides to do in terms of paying revenge for what has happened on Friday. But again, at the same time, who is he going to be attacking? Because ISIL-K is a rebel group, is a terrorist organization that hasn't got a territory necessarily. And if Russia does decide to go into Afghanistan, where Khorasan is at the moment, they're likely, again, to invite the wrath of the Taliban, who has fought the Russians of the years. So it's quite a difficult one for Putin. So the low hanging in this regard, I think it's likely to be the Ukrainians. If they do insist that Ukrainians have done this, we might just see Vladimir Putin moving towards Ukraine to pay that revenge following what happened on Friday.
All right. Thank you so much for your contribution, Senior Research Fellow and Director at Africa-Asia Dialogues at Thembisa Fakude.